I'm Evan McKnight, and I'm lead environment artist on Godfall.
Hi, I'm Tim Simpson, and I am the environment art director on Godfall.
Hey guys, I'm Chris Ha. I'm the studio art director for Counterplay Games.
So can you guys kind of talk about how the concept of this visual art style came to be in Godfall?
The visual, we wanted something different. We did on Duelist. We already had this. It was our first title, and Duelist already had this sci-fi mixed with medieval type of armor and weapons, and we loved it. A lot of people, I think, liked it, so we decided to pursue this, and it worked pretty well. We wanted a little bit more detail. Obviously, Duelist was a 2D sprite type of game, so we wanted to push further the envelope and really get all the designs proper definition. So
I feel like the game has at its core, it's a fantasy game, but it also has a lot of sci-fi elements. Is it difficult to implement those two genres together and make something that looks visually pleasing?
I don't think it's hard. A lot of other games did it, I think, and it worked pretty well. I mean, everybody's, especially for us, I think, in our team, everybody loved all the medieval stuff, armors and all that type of feel. We just wanted to, and everybody likes robots, obviously. I mean, at least I do. Sci-fi and elements and things like that. So giving a sci-fi hint to the armors, I think, was definitely a big plus. So it's I don't think it was hard. I think it was just it came very naturally, I think. very much.
One of the things I really like about your game is in the environments is the use of color. There's a lot of bright, vivid colors, and you don't see that in games very often. Usually it's a certain tone the game's going for. What made you guys decide to make the environment so vibrant and just kind of eye-popping?
Yeah, so I guess one of the briefs I got from Chris and the studio heads joining the team for the environment side of things is they wanted to make the world really inviting and full of colors. So it's going to be somewhere that's visually has colors that jump off the screen, especially for the the next gen systems, to really show that not just the typical next gen brown or something. We wanted to have really rich surface materials and colors that really showed the power of the next gen systems, as well as created something that's just, it feels good to be running around in that world, right? Because it's not like something that's super dreary or very monotone color palette. We really made a conscious effort to make sure that the color palettes were changing as you progress through the game, so that each biome really felt unique and just a rich, vibrant experience for each one.
Evan, do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. So, one of the biggest goals we had going into Godfall was, trying to achieve a really great looking next gen title. So one of the big things that we focused on was the materials for the environments, and pushing those as far as we could go. So, like Tim was saying with the colors, we also really pushed the material response on everything in the game, really making sure that we had nice reflections, all over the place, a nice blend of metallics and decorative elements and stuff like that. We wanted the world to feel ancient, but still affluent and still colorful and warm and interesting.
When you guys were designing some of the flora and fauna in the game, I mean, some of it obviously looks semi-real life, but a lot of it it's kind of twisted ever so slightly to look a little bit more fantasy. You can talk about some of the inspirations that specifically the plants around the area and the trees.
Yeah, so I mean, basically every aspect of the environment, we took a lot of inspiration from real life, and then we kind of pushed that, modified that to make it a little bit more fantastical. So one example would be in the Tower of Trials, the whole environment, one of the main points of reference was mineral growth, looking at what a mineral might look like, the size in the palm of your hand, and then expanding that to hundreds of feet tall And we took the same approach to all the foliage as well. So, we started kind of basing things off of real world, and then thought, how can we push this a bit further through scale, or, through the shape language of everything. So the main goal for every artist was just to kind of exaggerate and use a bit of their own creativity. And that was one of the things that made the project so fun, was having that freedom, that creative freedom, and also trying to empower our team to kind of, feel like they can put their own spin on things.
Yeah, exactly. Like for say something like the Water Realm, one of the briefs that we worked with a really talented concept artist and 3D artist, right? So everything starts at the concept phase. And like one of the briefs that we kind of gave them is we want it to feel like a massive ancient coral reef that's kind of being drained out, almost like the parting of the Red Sea. So that kind of effect. And they really took those ideas and just made some super abstract corals and really interesting mix of like the bioluminescence and organics mixed with actual, like foliage, like seaweed and stuff like that. So this kind of interesting blend of the organics and, the hard surfaces like barnacles and stuff added a really cool like flavor to that zone, I think.
What did the next gen of consoles, Xbox Series X and PS5, open up for you guys creatively? Because of course you have like, you have your dev build on PC and you can crank it to however much you want, but your average person doesn't have a RTX 390 or even whatever the prototype was called that you guys probably had before that, So what does it open up for you creatively to have so much more power in the console?
I mean, the biggest thing was just being able to focus more on the arts and focus a little less on how optimized everything needed to be. Optimization is still an important part of game development no matter what, but being able to have a bit more freedom up front to say, okay, like, let's try not to think about what our limits are here, and let's see how far we can push it, and then kind of pare it back where we need to. That was really freeing, and that enabled like the artists to really do a lot in a very short amount of time too. So that was the main advantage, I think, from like an art standpoint, like a technical art standpoint, was just being less limited by sort of like what we could build.
Yeah, and in terms of the lighting in the game, it's all real time, so we didn't have to really spend a lot of time waiting around for light bakes and stuff to finish to actually see the final result in the world. Like if we wanted to make, can we make the sunlight in this zone a little bit more red or a little bit more orange, or hey, can we desaturate all the colors and push the whole, the color of the fog into a completely different color space. That really allowed us to iterate super quick and get these kind of unique visual looks to each zone. It allowed for a lot of experimentation. Like what happens if we change the light angle in this zone? How does that interior space, does it feel completely different? Does it feel better? Does it help in terms of gameplay? Like, does it show the player path a lot better? So I would say that was a huge advantage, is just the iteration speed that we were able to visually, almost like viz dev on the fly inside of Unreal Engine. And that was really great. As well as, I would say, Chris, you can probably speak to this, the sheer amount of detail that we could pack into characters and stuff, in terms of like adding, interesting armor and clothing. Chris, you want to talk about that? I think that really freed us up in terms of that too.
Yeah, in terms of characters, we were very fortunate to be able to add so much details on on all the characters, weapons, and it was more it was like Candyland. We were, well, can we have this? Yes. Can we have that? Yes. Can we put more details on areas, the size of the texture maps, and how many texture maps we can have for characters and things like that. It was making things very, very easy for us to push the quality and the details for in terms of characters and weapons and things like that. So yes, definitely it was good.
Chris, speaking to that, specifically for you, obviously you have a lot of history with Blizzard, and while I was playing this game, I actually looked at the armor a lot of times, like, wow, that armor looks really cool. Looks really Warcrafty. Big shoulder pads, big gauntlets, big swords. Even the camera angles in certain cinematics kind of stood out to me. How do you think your experience in Blizzard helped you improve the overall look and design of Godfall?
Well, Blizzard was a great experience. It's a great company. Met a lot of great people there. I learned so many things there, and I got to work in the cinematics team, which was it was great. Getting to work on all the really cool cinematics over there, it was a really great experience. now after that, Blizzard and getting away from World of Warcraft and the shoulder pads that probably weigh about 200 pounds each. We wanted to lighten it up a little bit. So it's not that heavy, but and I gotta say the part tech that we added to the armor would make the armor feel the medieval armor feel almost like an Iron suit, so that the weight of all the metal pieces and you can see the weapons are pretty big. All that makes the tech part very very useful. So it's like every valor plate feels like an actual Iron Man suit. Allows players to hold those shoulder pads in place and things like that. So after that, yeah, to answer your question, I learned a lot at Blizzard. I obviously there's a lot of influence kind of evolve, right? And making Godfall into what it is. I'm sure I had some some things that came back from working at Blizzard, but I tried to not to make it very similar. So
yeah, well, I would say like that's mostly that would be you as a person, that your style, what you like, what you tend to enjoy making or expressing yourself, that's all your style, you know what I mean? You just happen to be at Blizzard while you were doing it.
That's right.
So Evan and Tim, you guys talk about some of the inspirations for your environments. I mean, when I was walking through a lot of them, I felt a little bit of Warcraft, I saw some Lord of the Rings, maybe a little bit of Dragon Age. Like, it felt like you took all these genres and kind of mashed them together to make this medieval fantastical world of these like levels. It was just really fun to just stop and look at every now and again.
Yeah, so for us, the challenge was like exactly kind of all of those influences coming together. At certain points, it's like, oh, is this too much kind of just like medieval, like Lord of the Rings? Is this a little too sci-fi? And it was trying to really find that balance, so that it would be something that felt a little bit more different than like your kind of standard. Oh, this is like a 5,000-year-old castle in Great Britain, or something like that, or this kind of looks like Lord of the Rings. Or so I think that was a big challenge. And again, having access to all of those different surface materials, so things like carbon fiber. Or all of these kind of like alloys, especially if you look at a lot of the Tower of Trials kits, that allowed us to kind of blend in that sci-fi and give it a bit more of a unique look than your just kind of standard castles and stuff like that. But yeah, the challenge was to make it feel like these ancient landscapes in each of these biomes that had an existing culture, and kind of like a lot of the spaces felt like crumbling ruins, and that there's been something existing there for a long time. So that was a fun challenge, is to like how destroyed do we go with certain things, right? And how just weathered do we want to make it? So that was a fun part of the production for sure.
Yeah, we spent a lot of time just figuring out the look development of what we wanted everything to look like, and like Tim was saying, it was a balancing act between going more medieval or going more fantasy, sci-fi, and kind of merging those all together before we landed on like a good blend of something that looks ancient but still has those fantastical elements and subtle elements of science fiction, some areas more than others, but that was always the biggest challenge, and the biggest reward when we kind of settled on something that sort of blended all those together and looked solid at the end of the day.
You guys talk about, I think one of the misconceptions about environmental artists in general or level designers, is that there has to be a flow both visually and gameplay wise to each level. Can you talk about some of the challenges when doing that in a third person game where you're hacking and slashing and have to fight multiple enemies in any given area at a time, and how you get that to feel good and flow well through the level, so you're not feel like you're going just from corridor to an open plane to corridor to open plane?
Yeah,
Tim, you want to tackle that one?
Yeah, for sure. So like for me, when it comes to like environment art, so there's environment art and then there's level design. And usually when those two departments work really synergistically together, that's when you get really interesting spaces that look visually appealing, but also play really well, right? So in terms of where the player intuitively knows to follow this path, or, oh, this is probably a side path just based on the visual weighting of something. So for us, it really starts with communicating with the level designers pretty much every day as we're, arting up the spaces and phases. We don't just pack on all this detail. We kind of really block in the big shapes in terms of, the visual composition. So, if we place these mountains or this big rock arch here, does that frame where the player should be going nicely? And then we kind of go back and forth with level design on that. And they'll say, hey, we need, this space to be X amount of meters in radius to support combat. So then it's up to us to kind of take that gray block design and say, okay, what can we put that's visually interesting here to make this area memorable? And then, focus on the entrance and exit of that area that is kind of going to tease the player down the path to something else interesting. We call them like POIs, so points of interest. And really, finding the right balance of how many of those you scatter throughout the world is a really good, first step in kind of keeping the player playing and guiding them throughout each zone and keeping the experience fresh throughout.
And do you guys, as environmental artists, do you guys think ray trace shadows are here to stay, or do you think they're another fad in the graphics area of gaming, as a lot of things tend to come in and they're the hot thing, for visual graphics and artists, and then they kind of fade away and something else replaces that? I remember real-time shadows took off, which was great, but I remember real-time reflections not so much with like water and mirrors and stuff.
Yeah, I guess I can talk to this one a little bit. In the past, before I was the environment art director, I was actually a lighting artist and environment artist in the past of my career. So for me, ray tracing, it's super, super interesting. I think it's still really in its infancy stage, but it seems extremely promising, right? You see a lot of the big engines starting to embrace it. A lot of the hardware is starting to embrace it. I think it's definitely kind of going back to what I was talking about earlier with the whole iteration speed, not having to bake shadows and stuff like that, having more accurate shadows that you can get nice soft fall-offs on. It just starts to bring that gap between pre-baked lighting and real-time lighting closer together, right? And the easier that iteration speed is, the better the overall game's going to look, because you're not spending, we'll see what that level looks like in like a week from now once it's all finished baking. So I think ray tracing, I think it's definitely here to stay. I think it's going to become more and more efficient. We've already kind of seen that since the beginning when they first introduced it into Unreal Engine. I think it was, you would turn it on and your viewport would drop down to like 2 or 3 frames a second. And now with every iteration of Unreal Engine, like they've started to optimize it, and there's, tools being put in place that can help you and tech artists like that. That's a huge part of the team when it comes to that, as well as having the tech art department to help support us be like, what should be casting shadows and what don't we actually need to be casting shadows, and finding that right balance for performance and visual oomph. But I think, yeah, reflections and, ambient occlusion and stuff like that, it's only going to start to get less and less expensive as the tech becomes developed over time. And the hardware is, exponentially growing to support that stuff. So I think it's here to stay. But I think you can still get a lot out of just good old fashioned, non-ray trace lighting. But I think if you're looking for the future, like with Unreal Engine 5 and stuff like that, for sure, people are going all in on the ray tracing front.
Yeah, I definitely think it's here to stay. I think it's just, like another tool we have as artists, and another sort of layer to the final image. And I think as tech improves and, artists improve, like working with that tech, like visuals are just going to get better and better. And, maybe at some point something new will come along and it won't be the focus any longer, but it's still going to be there.